Say hello. It's nice to see all of you. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about some basic points of the practice that are important and crucial for all of us, and that probably all of us are experiencing or have experienced now as we were sitting together. One might be discomfort, right? So you might be uncomfortable sitting here and sitting still, particularly with the body, training the body to remain still in one posture, and it brings up a whole lot of things inside of the body and the mind that are usually quite unpleasant. So there's anxiety, there's worries, there's a whole lot of future and past. You ask yourself, how much longer will we sit? When does this session ever come to an end? It's painful, it's hurting me, I want to shift my posture, I want to get out of this, etc. Also, the mind is basically very, very restless or active all the time. That is not a pleasant situation, to be confronted with your own mind and to realize that it is completely, utterly untamed. It does whatever it wants to do, and it makes you feel comfortable and uncomfortable just pretty much randomly. So such a mind is what is at the center of your life. It guides your actions. It makes you do things. This is where your decisions are coming from. This is where you're actually shaping your reality with. So it's important to understand it and to see how it works, particularly in the context of how it creates suffering and how it creates happiness. When could you see that better? It's when you become really still, when you try to actually see what is really going on within yourself. First of all, you have to learn to be okay with truth, to be okay with reality, to be okay with the way it is, instead of fighting against it, trying to change it, bending it to your will, following your preferences. Rather than that, see the way it is. If you are uncomfortable, then acknowledge that. First step. There's discomfort. The next step would then be to investigate this. Why is it that I'm so uncomfortable? It might even be that your body is quite okay, but the mind just is uncomfortable. You have uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable memories. Maybe there's a whole lot of striving, trying to get to the next moment, trying to get to the future. Why is that? What is the mind looking for? Why is it so active? And who can know that best? Of course you. There's only one person in the world that can know you, which is yourself. Now you can know best why is it that you feel the way you feel. What are you doing in there that produces suffering? And what are you doing in there that works, that produces happiness, release, that makes you joyful? And we start very simply by just simply adjusting the body and the breath in a way that makes it a bit more comfortable. So trying to find out, how can I breathe in a way that feels slightly better? It's a bit more comfortable. How can I sit in a way that feels better? What can I do to support my posture, my training, so that I'm a bit more comfortable in my body? And it's of course not only just what you do during the meditation session when you actually sit down. A majority of the work happens during the day. What are you doing throughout the day? How do you structure your day? How do you wake up? How do you go to sleep? How do you communicate with other people? How do you take a shower? How do you go shopping? Whatever it is that you do during the day, how do you do it? How much attention is there with your action? How united is your body and your mind? How calm are you within? How scattered is the mind? And why is it scattered? What is producing that scatteredness? And what is maintaining it, keeping it alive? All this can only be known by one person. It can only be known by yourself. I'm not saying that this is easy. It's probably the most difficult thing to know yourself properly. To investigate and really try to understand yourself. Very, very difficult. And then particularly dropping those things that make you uncomfortable and cultivating those things that give you comfort, give you, give you happiness. So what is it that produces discomfort or suffering? It is our mind wandering out, going elsewhere, getting lost in our environment, finding fault, for example. Finding fault in other people and their actions, finding fault in circumstance. In other words, simply the mind being in motion. That's why we suffer. That's at the essence, at the base of suffering. As soon as the mind comes back home and stays there and becomes centered there, suffering stops. Or let's say a vast majority of suffering stops, at least. So one of the main causes of suffering is the mind flowing out and getting lost in the world. It's almost like the mind is some sort of like sticky substance and it sticks to everything. Do you remember these things that we were playing with when we were younger? These like slime things? Children like to play with, like Play-Doh or slime, and if you play on a carpet with it, then afterwards like all the dirt of the carpet is stuck to it. And it's hard to wash. And after a while these things are so dirty and crusted that you just have to throw them away. So the mind is kind of similar, like so many things are sticking to it. So the mind is not at all free if many things are sticking to it. If it gets involved with the world is sticking to it. It stains the mind in a way. And when I say the world, I mean the activity of the six senses, which is sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, the five external senses of the body, and thought, like the activity of the intellect. And the mind continuously sticks to those activities. And these activities stick to the mind. That's the reason why we're uncomfortable within ourselves. The mind is constantly stuck to something. It might be stuck to a set of thoughts. And it vibrates with those thoughts. And when those thoughts are positive, they pull the mind up. So you have a positive mind. If those thoughts are negative, then they kind of pull the mind down. You have a negative mind then. So we need to first of all learn to be watchful of our own mind and see like when does it leave the body or when does it stay within. You are like a guard standing at the door, like at a town's, how do you call these? Gate. Yeah, like a town's guard, like at the gate of a town. And you stand there and you need to watch who is coming into the town and who is going out. Like what is leaving your person and what is entering your person. If you can practice restraint at the gate of the senses, then the mind is already becoming much more quiet, much more relaxed, much more at ease. And the result of that is that you are comfortable with yourself. You feel really good with yourself. When you feel really good with yourself, you are kind of untouched by the world. Or whatever goes on around you, it does not make you suffer. That does not mean that you become like a passive person that doesn't care whatever happens. But you are not suffering circumstances. They don't make you agitated and uncomfortable anymore. You don't have these questions like, who am I in this group? Am I good enough? Do people like me? How would I have to change myself so that people like me, etc.? all that kind of comes to an end because you're comfortable with yourself. You're at ease with yourself. Having said that, it always has to be in balance with what you actually do. So resting within your being is one thing. Cultivating your actions is another. That should always go hand in hand. Some people, they think, oh, wait a second, if I'm just relaxed, I can just follow all my preferences and do as whatever I please to do. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm not telling you follow your every impulse and just do whatever you feel like doing. Being centered in knowing yourself gives you the opportunity to let go of suffering. While you have that, you can then cultivate your being. You can then cultivate your person. Become a cultivated human being. So that has to go hand in hand. Nowadays, many people believe that letting go means kind of like being passive, not doing anything, and just doing whatever I want. And then at some point I will reach enlightenment because I'm just present all the time. And at some point it will just click and then I'm just beyond suffering. Or spiritual practice means just being present or something. Just be aware. These kind of things. You'll come across that. You probably have come across that already. This idea that let everything float by and just relax. But it doesn't solve the question of action. We're all agents. We're all acting in certain ways. And either those actions, they lift you up or they pull you down. And as they lift you up, you lift up beings around you. If those actions are pulling you down, you pull down beings around you. So your actions always have an impact in the larger context. You can say we are interconnected through our actions, through what we do, through our decisions, etc. It gives us connections. So, for example, this room here, we're interconnected through the practice of meditation. We meet and we get to know each other through the practice of meditation, which is an action, primarily. It is not just being. But there's a whole lot of acting. There's a whole lot of directing attention in a certain way. Directing attention in a way that is more skillful, meaning it leads to the end of suffering. The abandoning of unskillful action, all the things that you do with your attention, with your mind, that lead to suffering, you stop them, you drop that. You direct your mind and your attention in better ways. So that finally your attention becomes so still that it can be directed back at itself. So you can truly understand yourself. That is a long way to go for most of us. The first priority on the path is really just getting our lives together and getting our lives in order so that we have time and space, both in body and mind, to actually practice meditation. Then the next priority is being able to sit still for a good while. This is how the training works. First thing is create space for training. Make it a priority in your life. Then train. Not fancy ideas or spiritual whatever things, but actually training to sit still for a good amount of time. Go for an hour. Sitting without moving the body. And of course you don't start with an hour. Start with maybe 20 minutes. I don't know what you can do. You do that. 15 minutes, 20 minutes of sitting perfectly still in good posture. And then grow that. Make it better. Cultivate it. You compare your practice of today with the practice of yesterday. Where have you improved? What got better? And really taking pride in growth, in doing things well. This is one of the main spirits that I would like to pass on, taking pride in doing things well. Like you're a skilled craftsperson. You're working on something. You create a piece of art and you do it with love. That's what I mean when I say you do, taking pride in it. I, of course, don't mean feeling better than everyone else. Like feeling that you're somehow special, more special than other people. But by taking pride in it means to enjoy your craft. This is what every master has in common with other masters. No matter what, whether it's a painter, or someone that creates sculptures, or an athlete, those who make it to the top, they're all people who do what they do with unbelievable degrees of attention and love to detail. For a meditator, for somebody that practices on a spiritual path, that applies to all areas of life. And the idea is to put attention into what you do and to do it with love, to do it with care, and to do it really well. And as I always said before, it's about, small tiny things like how do you put your shoes down when you take them off? Or how do you make your bed in the morning when you leave it? Like little tiny things, starting by bringing order, by bringing beauty into your life, by showing that you care. Small tiny details. Then slowly you grow a space in which you can actually then really start to cultivate the mind, which is a very subtle phenomenon, very subtle thing. It's not easy to cultivate. If the rest of your life is reflecting chaos, it's going to be impossible to cultivate the mind. So life has to somewhat become calm and orderly for the mind to reflect that too. So the mind can become calm and orderly. That all might sound very like moralistic maybe or something like that. It's not at all. When the mind becomes calm, it reveals an unbelievable amount of happiness and joy and aliveness that we're all missing out on if we don't have that. It's like you're literally walking around with a treasure. You have everything you could ever ask for right there. But we don't see it because we're so preoccupied with other things and circumstances and people and whatnot. So we have no chance to actually see that treasure inside because we haven't started digging yet. And in order to dig, it's work to dig. It's not easy to dig, right? Digging a hole is pretty hard work. And so this is the work that we're doing. Precisely that. You're digging down and you're trying to find what is at the core of yourselves. And it is unbelievably beautiful and good and comfortable. And it would be a wonderful contribution if that could shine through your actions into this world. Much better than putting more anger into this world and more frustration and more criticism and more whatever. The world needs more people who let go of their own problematic minds. But that would mean we all would have to take responsibility for ourselves. It's a very difficult thing to do. Parenting ourselves, I call it. Very often we have been parented by people who are also unable to parent themselves. Emotionally, their minds just as confused and scattered as our mind. So it is hard work indeed. And it's good. It's good to have something that takes you decades to master. It's good to have something that you can grow slowly and nurture and create this beautiful thing out of yourself over a long period of time. This is not like a course that, you do this weekend course and then you're called master, you get the certification of being a master of this or that. This is truly something to master, is your mind, yourself. And we approach these actions like meditation practice. When you sit quietly, when you keep the body still, you will see so much about yourself. How do you treat yourself? Couldn't be more obvious than in those 30 minutes. Like, what are your demands? Are they realistic? Do you have realistic demands? Like, for example, demanding yourself to be completely concentrated. I should be concentrated. And then you sit down for 30 minutes and you find out that you're not at all concentrated. Not even for a moment. Shocker. What happens next? You start disliking yourself. And criticizing. And pushing. And going like, damn it, I should be able to just get my mind together and focus. Instead, I'm sitting here for 30 minutes and I'm super uncomfortable. And I can't wait for it to stop. I call that the first big insight. To see the chaos. Very clearly. Without escape. To kind of brutally face yourself. And see all the work that's still to be done. That's good. It's a good shock. Because simultaneously to seeing the chaos, you see order. You see, simultaneously to your pain, you can see the potential for joy. If I could let go of that, what would happen? How would that be? If I could just stop treating myself in such a way, how would I feel differently? If I would change the way I talk to myself in meditation practice, would that somehow improve things? If I would change the way I see myself during meditation practice, would it improve things? And what does improvement really mean in this context? Would I feel happier? How happy could I be? Another good question to ask yourselves. How happy could you be? What's the upper limit of your happiness? How far can you push it? What's your potential? I think you could explore these things. How happy could you be? And I don't mean dancing and singing around. Like pretending to be happy, showing it out, an outward expression of happiness. That is easy, we can all do that. Social media, perfect testimony to that. Like everyone shows their perfect side. That is easy. What is not so easy is to actually feel that. Because it requires your mind to become utterly serene, very, very quiet. So that's why I recommended today to focus on those three kind of muscles, to train those three muscles. The first one, being able to catch your mind when it wanders off. As soon as your mind leaves its home, which here is the breath, simply knowing that you breathe in, that you breathe out. Was that simple enough for all of you? Just knowing that you breathe in, knowing that you breathe out? Yes? You could make that complicated by thinking a lot about it, but actually it's super easy. Just how do you know that you're breathing in? How do you know that you're breathing out? Just stay with that knowledge. It's good enough. And then you will forget it. You do one breath and suddenly you're off, your mind wanders off. Can you catch that early on? Can you catch your mind when it just starts to kind of shiver a little bit and is about to wander away from the breath? is about to forget the breath. Can you catch it right there? Or can you catch it 10 minutes later when you thought about God knows what already? Right? In the beginning, this will be the case. You'll be mostly sitting there, maybe 30 minutes of meditation practice, and 90% of your practice is going to be just like, maybe 98% of your practice is just random thinking about stuff. And you have a tiny percentage of actually being with the breath. So train yourself to catch it early on, to catch the mind when it leaves the breath, right there. Or when it just left it. Instead of 10 minutes of distraction, aim for 9 minutes, 8 minutes. Catch it earlier and earlier. Okay? So that's the first kind of training. The second one is, once you catch your mind, to bring it back to the breath. It's like to redirect your attention. That equals, in our daily life, equals the process of actually diverting our attention away from the problem to the solution. Do you see the parallel? Like, how many times do we focus on the problem and fight the problem and give energy to the problem with all our emotional being and so forth, rather than just shifting over to the solution, which is also there. So this is what you learn by redirecting your attention, bringing the mind back to the breath. Here is the solution. But your thinking mind will say, no, that's not the solution. You're escaping the problem. You could be dealing with this problem that's right in front of you. Instead, you're just escaping into your breath. You're just passive. You're just running away from facing your life. Then you can tell your mind, right now, I'm sitting in meditation practice. The only problem to solve is when the mind leaves the breath to come back. Later there might be other problems to solve, like, conversations and so forth. But right now, it's just the breath. I don't need to worry about anything else. Tell your mind that. Then redirect your attention. In other words, it's okay to enjoy yourself right now. I give you permission to rest a little, like that. Because the real problem here is not that you solve problems. The real problem is that you don't allow yourself to be at ease. You have a problem with being at ease. And you have all these clever excuses why you can't allow yourself to be at ease. Because there's important stuff that you need to take care of right now, and so forth. You all know the games. The third point to cultivate is then to stay with the breath. Like, as soon as you come back to the breath, to actually stay there. To develop the strength of concentration. Many people make the mistake of forcing at this point. They become like really aggressive and pushy. And come on, stay, and tense. You can see their foreheads all becoming like wrinkly. Trying hard to focus. Many people even develop headaches through this practice. That's a sign that we're doing it wrong. The right way to approach this is more like, let your mind rest here, put it down, and let it sink into the breath. Become one with the breath. And just have a good time here. So it's more like an sensation than forcing yourself there. The more comfortable it is, the more naturally you tend to just stay there. So there you have to find your balance. For that, to find the balance in your practice, you have to fail many, many, many times. I hope you will fail a lot. Because through every failure, you will gradually learn to do it better, to improve the practice. To hurt yourself a little less and to benefit yourself a little more. Okay? So this is the idea. So I want to encourage all of you that first of all, you can do all this. You can become really, really good at meditation. You can make yourself really comfortable and really happy, independent and free. There's this possibility. All it requires is your wish. And if that is very strong, you will do what it takes. For many people, unfortunately, this means they haven't suffered enough yet. There needs to be some more suffering for the wish to benefit yourself to grow. And for some of you, there has been enough. When you make a firm decision to make this a priority in your life, that will slowly grow. Okay? So this is all that comes to mind for today. Are there any questions?